wrong. I think Niantic's decision-making in regards to Pokemon Go has been nearly across the board, one gigantic train wreck of epic proportions. But watching these content creators wince and whinge and cry about it is just peak deliciousness. Okay, so this past week Niantic made changes to balance remote raiding, with passes nearly doubling in price and the amount of remote raids a trainer could do in a day being limited to 5. The Pokemon Go YouTuber community then lost their shit and released a statement decrying the change, but only about the remote raid limitations, not the price increase, which is hilariously tone-deaf because to the average player, limiting the number of remote raids has almost no effect on the overwhelming majority of players. Who the hell is doing more than 5 remote raids a day? Certainly not your average Joe Schmo casual trainer. Oh yeah, you know who does? YouTubers. Sure, there's whales and complete degenerates, but it's also streamers who sit at home and make content. So when they band together to use their collective influence to try and bend the ear of Niantic, that's why they don't even mention the changes that affect you, the average trainer. It's also why, at least for many of them, they passively mention the myriad of horrible decisions that have adversely affected huge cross-sections of the player base for years. But when one of those changes affects their ability to farm content, then it's a huge issue. I also love how they throw in players with disabilities like a tool to garner sympathy. I'm sure disabled people just love being used like that. But okay, let's put aside the emotional responses and make a more reasoned examination of just what Niantic has done to try and make sense of things, starting with their own statement as why they've made some of these changes. Niantic has said repeatedly that the reason they have and continue to make the game exponentially worse is because of their stated goal, which is to get players to go out and explore the world around them. Now, purely as a statement of fact coming from any business, this is obviously completely insane. To tell your customers that they are enjoying your product incorrectly, so you will make changes to ensure that they can't. I mean, can you imagine if Domino's announced that they are going to stop delivery because they want customers to go out and pursue their pizza? Any game developer, hell, any business, has to make a product that people want to have. The onus isn't on us, the customer, to play the game how the devs want. If the game wants us to go outside and explore, it's on the game to make us want to do that. So this statement is completely backwards and makes no sense unless you have the understanding that Niantic is not a game developer. Their business is in collecting and selling data. Also, you aren't the customer. You are the source of that data. So from Niantic's perspective, they make more money from you walking around with the game open and doing nothing than they would if you bought a raid pass. You essentially work for them, and if you're paying for content, you are paying for that privilege. Once you understand this, a lot of their decisions start to make a little bit more sense. It makes sense why Niantic would rather you not play the game at all than sit in front of your computer, pop 10 hours of incense, and live stream GoFest. Hell, they would make more money from that if you were just spoofing to New Zealand, because at least then your cloned cell phone data would be moving. So when Niantic removed the pandemic measures, requiring players to go out and move just to play, hopefully this makes more sense. But it still doesn't make sense, right? I mean, even for their stated goals, a lot of the game is still idiotic. You see, Pokemon Go is an onion of bad decisions made over several years. There are layers, with one decision leading to another until everything becomes broken and nonsensical. Let's take GoFest for example. So you're Niantic and you want to have a huge event to celebrate your game. Well, when should you have it? Why, in the summer, of course. Kids are out of school, parents are using their vacation time. Makes perfect sense, right? Well, what if you want to have 2 huge annual events? I mean, 2 is better than 1, right? Okay, we'll do a regional festival that spans the entire world. But when should we have it? Well, if you're having 2 huge events a year, then obviously you should space them from each other equally. Great. So we'll have our big events in the summer and the middle of winter. And now we enter the valley of horrible decisions. Welcome to 3rd grade science class. There are 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. Fall and spring are generally moderate and comfortable, while summer and winter are extremely hot or extremely cold. When one season is happening in the northern hemisphere, its opposite is happening in the southern hemisphere. So the way Pokemon Go festivals are set up, they are always taking place in the most inhospitable temperatures every single time. Add in the fact that Niantic nerfed the instances only to be effective as long as you're moving, which requires players to go out and explore, and you have a game that is basically telling large portions of the globe to fuck off during these events. For example, when the Pokemon Go Hoenn Tour took place in February, the entire state of Michigan was under a severe winter freeze event with hundreds of thousands of people without power that same weekend. How do you think the prospect of spending 16 hours over 2 days outside catching unknowns and costume Pikachu sounded to those people? Now, the obvious solution here would be to schedule these events in the spring and fall for the Northern Hemisphere, and fall and spring for the Southern Hemisphere. But you know why that message will never be heard by the #HearUs crowd? Because for Pokemon Go YouTubers, this does not affect them in any meaningful way. Because, just like Niantic's corporate headquarters, most of them live in sunny Southern California, where the weather is perfect for playing the game 364 days a year. So you'll have to forgive me if I see these content creators with their crocodile tears and reaction face thumbnails and laugh in their faces, because now, suddenly, the horrendous choices made by Niantic on a seemingly weekly basis are becoming their problem. Now is when the game developers need to listen up for the greater good. Fuck off!